the upstairs as well. We're going to have opening remarks down here on the bottom floor in the corner. If you're interested in listening to Robert say a few words and a few other people, please work your way downstairs and over to the corner away from the doors.
Are you ready?
I see everybody but Sherri. Oh, there she is.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
I want to do the thing.
Okay.
Just come through this.
Not gonna fall off.
Hello.
Hello. Good evening and welcome everyone. Thank you for being here to celebrate the exciting opening of Americans Who Tell the Truth. My name is Penny Dublin, and I am here because I have a deep connection to the Lewiston Auburn community. I lived in Lewiston for 19 years, and I taught at Lewiston Auburn College and at Edward Little High School. I first learned about Robert Shetterly last year at a conference at Thomas College in Waterville. After listening to Rob talk about his work and the mission of Americans Who Tell the Truth, I decided that I wanted to exhibit his portraits in a small gallery at Meeting House Arts in Freeport, where I served on the board. As I worked on this project, I worried about how these precious, somewhat large portraits would get safely from Brooksville, where Rob lives, to the gallery in Freeport. But Rob wasn't worried. After we made the necessary arrangements, Rob arrived a week later with all 18 portraits stuffed into the trunk of his car. I was astonished to see these treasures casually wrapped in a bunch of old blankets and worn out quilts. But I then realized very quickly that considering all the other challenges that these portrait subjects had faced, they looked pretty comfortable in the back of Rob's car. Tonight, we have the rare privilege of seeing all 238, I think it is.
75.
275, sorry. Somebody told me 238. 275 portraits in this iconic venue, a building that resonates with historic meaning and thus provides a perfect setting for this exhibit. It is, in fact, the second time that all 275 portraits have been on exhibit in the same place. We have many people to thank for making all of this possible. Please join me in a round of applause after I finish reading all of their names. First, Tom Platts, lead architect in the renovation of the Bates Mill, who envisioned this project and offered this space for this exhibition. And thanks to Doreen Sauls, property manager of the Bates Mill complex, and great thanks to artist Kevin Callahan, who hung all of these portraits with a great deal of help. And thank you to Paula Marcus Platts for organizing the LA support team that includes Eileen Fair, Susan Weiss, Wendy Schlotterbeck, and Kitsy Claxton, who recruited all of the docents, and thank you to all of them too. And finally, huge thanks to the indomitable Shetterly team, Connie Carter, the Director of Education, and Christy Gonzalez, the Director of Strategic Engagement. They have worked tirelessly and with good humor to pull all of the threads together to make this entire month of events happen. So let's give all of them a hand.
I'm going to ask them to come up here for a second.
You want to come up here? Can I what? Where's Connie?
I was just going to tell people to move this way. There's more space.
This is Christy. None of us would happen without her.
Nothing would happen without. I don't know where Connie is.
Where's Connie?
It's probably.
Here, Connie.
There we go. The Shetterly team. Okay, so now it is my great privilege to introduce Rob Shetterly, who is one of our finest truth tellers. I can think of no better way to tell you about Rob and his work other than to quote his own words. The saving grace of a healthy democracy is not a handful of heroes, but a culture of engaged citizens inspired by the courage of truth tellers. Courage invigorates democracy. For more than 20 years, it has been the mission of Americans who tell the truth to teach responsibility for injustices and to provide role models for how to remedy them. In addition to Rob's mission as an artist, his thoughtful writing is equally powerful. Let me end with the final words from his essay, The Song of Justice, as it offers hope to those of us who are in need of it right now. When one wanders into the dense and raggedy woods of our collective history and tries to find one's way to the practice and the truth of our ideals, it is easy to get lost. So many false narratives, exceptionalist myths, and racist justifications. Listen to the songs of justice. They will lead you home. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Rob, for your portraits of truth tellers and for your inspirational writing. We are in need of your gift of truth now more than ever.
Thank you all for coming. I want to continue the thank yous just a little bit. Where is Kevin Callahan? Would you come up? Kevin is the one who hung this show. When we met with him, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago, Connie and I were here. Were you here, Christy? And Kevin pulled out his measuring tape, and we said, well, it's going to be 275 portraits. And he walked around for about 15 minutes and said, yeah, we can do it. And it's going to look like this. This whole design was conceived just out of nothing, it seemed. This guy, I've never seen a more beautiful installation of anything. Oh,
I've hung several exhibits of Rob's work, and the first one when I was much younger.
And we all were.
And the words and these images have seeped into my person. They actually were an education. I wasn't even aware I was being educated. So I love this body of work. It's not just art. And that's why I wanted to do this show and work on it.
And before I go any further, I want to say something about my wife, Gail. Where is Gail? Is she around? Hey, you want to go up here or you want to stay there?
Amongst the mass.
No, she wants to come up.
I mean, some of you might think, what was I like to live with for the last 23 years doing this project? It's a bit obsessive, right? She's been amazing in putting up with this and also supporting that. But there's something else much more important than even that. Every single one of these paintings is better because she helped me with it. Every one of them I got to, well, she always comes in at the beginning when I'm just drawing it, tells me that I've got the nose in the wrong place. And then at each stage of it, she comes back and offers a very sound critique. It's been, I couldn't have done this without her. I mean, you know, some of you who are, well, anything you do where you get very close to it and look and look and look, you get too close to it. You can't see anymore what's there. She could see it and help me, even though times I got really pissed off. I didn't want to change it again, but there it was. I mean, there's a truth teller behind a truth teller. This has been a joint project. Thank you, sweetie. So I just want to quickly mention a couple other things. Sitting right here is Rivera's son. She is an upcoming portrait. Rivera is an amazing peace activist and writer. She writes stories, particularly for young adults, that are incredibly engaging and beautifully written, very imaginative. And get people. I mean, I read them and I just get so caught up in them, that lead you in the heroic making of peace through people who are struggling to try to figure out how to deal with injustice, and often violent injustice. She teaches how to do that through her beautiful writing. And so that'll be, I think we do a number of our unveilings in Blue Hill. She has some connections there. We'll probably do that, I don't know, sometime in this winter when I finish the painting. Thank you. I took one look at her. I've met her before, but I took one look and I said, actually, like Zoe said, it was a portrait, right? Zoe Weil, her portrait's somewhere here. I said, oh my God, all that hair. You can spend a couple weeks on a face, but you can spend 2 months on a hair. Big hair. It's an issue. Anyways, so thanks, Rivera. Thanks for being here. So I'm not going to talk long. There are a number of other people here. I mean, Zoe, I just mentioned, who's a portrait subject. Natasha Mayers, who's a portrait subject, is also right here. Stick your hand up. When I started doing some politically engaged art years and years ago in Maine, she was my role model, and she continues to be, and was one of the early portraits, because I don't know if I would have gotten into this work and also the importance of it without Natasha's model of how to, even when nobody likes what you're doing and also isn't paying you anything for it, you keep doing it. And she is tireless. Thank you. There's a poem by William Stafford, some of you may know it, called A Ritual to Read to Each Other. I read that poem frequently, and I'm going to recite, I hope, the first stanza of it, because that has something just I want to respond to. It starts like this: if you don't know the kind of person I am, and I don't know the kind of person you are, a pattern that others made may prevail in the world, and following the wrong God home we may miss our star. And I was thinking about all the wrong gods that we have followed. The dominance and exploitation of nature, indigenous genocide, slavery, racism, manifest destiny, materialism, rogue capitalism, all these things, and then militarism. The wrong gods, until the stars or the star is almost invisible. And now we're at a place where it's very hard to see any light at night and where we're going to be going. I like to think that the values that are expressed by the people hanging in this room about justice, about equality, about militant nonviolence, about love, about compassion, about how to support the common good and struggle to make it real for everyone are the things that are going to bring us through this next era, because they are the values that we're going to have to survive it, unless it descends into something terrible. And so if this group of portraits means anything, and it means something very different now than it did 23 years ago when I painted the first portrait, when I was just so pissed off about Iraq and the fact that was being allowed to happen. It's now a much broader look at American history and American activism and the reality of American values and who stands for them, who fights for them, and who takes them away. It's about power. It's about how powerful people who really believe something true and honest can make it happen and get power when they seem to have no power at all. There's a portrait that's a fairly new one up here, Julia Butterfly Hill. Is it?
It's upstairs.
It's upstairs. That's the last thing I'm going to say. Then I'm going to have quickly some other people talk. But, she in 1997, when she was 23, she's the young woman who sat in a giant redwood tree in Humboldt County, California, for 2 years and 8 days. She was a kid involved with Earth First and was trying to save old growth forest and save, in particular, that tree that she named Luna. She had nothing. She except a little platform and a plastic tarp in a tree going through horrendous weather. And all the things that had to happen for her to survive in that tree for over 2 years. At the end of it, the CEO of the Pacific Lumber Company was calling her to negotiate about how they were going to save, how much forest they were going to save, and whether they, and how, just all the questions. She now had an incredible amount of power because of her courage and persistence. And that is the story that's told all over these portraits. Courage and persistence together can often make one person, a person with ostensibly no power, be powerful and change a situation. She says when she goes out to speak to kids, she says, "Find your tree." And well, this is clearly my tree, and I've been 23 years up in this tree, but I wouldn't go anywhere else. But so I want to invite. I think I'll have Doug Rawlings come up first. Doug's portrait is here. He is along with a couple other people, the founder of Veterans for Peace, a national and now international organization. He's also the president of Maine's chapter of Veterans for Peace, and also taught peace literacy and writing at the University of Maine at Farmington for many years, and is a great friend. Doug.
Wow, okay. Always be wary of an old guy showing up with a sheet of paper. 5 minutes. I'll be done in 5 minutes, I promise. Although I have to say, I think I'm painting 275, right? My number 275. And Walt Whitman is number 1. Huh? So Whitman got wisdom from rolling around in leaves of grass, right? I got it from smoking it, so. Slight difference between the two of us. So the analogy of a weave has been stolen from us by a person who will go unnamed. He has employed it to fashion a kind of cobweb of lies and misogyny and racism. Tonight, let's wrest that analogy from his grasp and employ it as we weave our own flowing scarf of truth and courage knitted together by a genuine love of community. So as we explore these amazing portraits by Rob Shetterly, we might perhaps look for connections between some of them based on our own lives and interests. Let us also honor Rob by showing him how much his work means to us. In addition to looking for connectivity, we might also open ourselves up to being grounds for the energy emanating from each portrait. The poet Robert Bly has maintained that an original work of art carries within it a force of energy akin to an electrical charge that is seeking out a sympathetic and empathetic grounding point. That could be you. Since I'm represented here mostly because of my work with Veterans for Peace, founded here in Lewiston in the summer of 1985, I began exploring the role that VFP might play here as a woven scarf for my own sense of deepened community. I found 16 portraits that could be said to have a direct connection to Veterans for Peace. I'd like to mention 6 of them. First is Howard Zinn, member of Veterans for Peace, author of A People's History of the United States, whose first chapter of that book deconstructed the myth of Christopher Columbus and advocated for a better understanding of what colonialists have done to indigenous people. I maintain that his work led directly to some states like Maine replacing Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. Then there's Colonel Ann Wright, member of Veterans for Peace. She resigned her post in the State Department when we invaded Iraq. Rob has called her the ultimate activist involved in many projects. Most recently, she has led multiple flotillas to provide medical supplies and food to the people of Gaza at great risk to her life. Then there's Cindy Sheehan, member of Veterans for Peace. I met Sheehan at our annual convention in Dallas, Texas, and she announced that she was going to go to George Bush's ranch to ask why her son was killed in Iraq. Her encampment and persistence called into question Bush's war in Iraq. It came to be known as Camp Casey, named after her son. Then there's Daniel Ellsberg, member of Veterans for Peace, who recently died. He is most well known for his publication of the Pentagon Papers that revealed the truth behind the war in Vietnam for the American people to see. His journey from being a war hawk, doing the bidding of the government, to an anti-war activist facing life imprisonment for speaking out has proven to be an inspiration to members of Veterans for Peace. Then there's Philip Berrigan, another member of Veterans for Peace, who is well known for his faith-based activism against war, especially the Vietnam War. He was arrested at BIW when he joined us in a protest against the christening of Navy destroyers. We christened a rowboat after him. The recent collection of his journals entitled The Ministry of Risk captures his path similar to Ellsberg's, from an infantryman to an anti-war activist facing multiple years in jail. Samantha Smith. How can a young woman who tragically died in a plane crash here in Lewiston at the age of 13 be an inspiration for Veterans for Peace, you might ask? Samantha was known as the youngest of ambassadors for peace as she ventured back and forth to Russia when she was 10, 11, and 12 years old. She cut through artificial political boundaries to meet with our so-called enemy face to face and establish personal connections with the Russian people. Our first International Veterans for Peace mission was to meet with Russian soldiers in 1986, soldiers who were veterans of their country's war in Afghanistan, a war very similar to my war in Vietnam. This past year, our chapter worked to have a roadway dedicated to Samantha Smith's memory, just off 295 in South Portland. Our intent was to inspire vacationers coming to Maine to find out more about Samantha Smith as they saw her name and questioned why she was there. I'd like to close my remarks by reading a poem that I wrote some 30 years ago. It attempts to capture why Judy and I moved to rural Maine to live out our lives and to raise a family. Given the current and future political scenes, the poem resonates even more deeply with me today. It's entitled Homage to the Winter Moon. Apple trees, stripped of their summer fruit, squat like ancient mothers, fingering the intricate lacework of their own moon shadows. And we, slipping into their solemn world, feel the evening strident headlines grow silent as a piece of this place, of this moment, sifts down into us, drifts into its own elaborate design, builds deep within us its own magical pillars to to carry us through days ahead. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. I forgot to mention that Doug is an extraordinary poet. He's invited me to sort of collaborate with him on a couple of his volumes of poetry, providing some paintings and drawings and etchings. He spent a lot of years, and probably still is, coming to terms with what he did and saw in Vietnam and how he lives with it. If you don't know his poetry, it's I think as healing for people who've never been to war as it might be for anybody who's been there. Thank you. I want Sherri Mitchell to come up now. Sherri Mitchell, a lot of you probably know Sherri. She's a Penobscot with some Passamaquoddy mixed in. She's an Indigenous lawyer, an activist, an amazing writer. She wrote Sacred Instructions, which I think an awful lot of us have read, giving us the ideas and the wisdom of how it is we have to live on this planet if we actually want to continue living here. And she's just an extraordinary person, a woman of enormous big heart. Sherri.
Koe Paziduin, Andalawisi wana hamo gwasit na geo banawabskewi, and Donabama Kawasus, no banawabskewi nagakakakos no tibayak. My name in my language is Wanahamo Gwasit, and my family is Bear Clan from the Penobscot Nation and Crow Clan from the Passamaquoddy tribe at Tibayak. And I told Rob the other day that I would come and do this, and I was given no instruction. So fair warning. I think that one of the things that I often tell people about Rob is that he has done more for the advancement of women's rights, Black rights, Indigenous rights, civil rights, environmental justice than any other person that I know. And he has done that by amplifying the voices of those who are doing that work in the world. And I am more and more every year that I have the pleasure and the privilege of knowing him, more humbled and more honored to be his friend. So let's just hear it for Rob one more time. And this little red-haired sprite over here to my right, Rivera's son. Years and years and years ago, Rivera reached out to me and asked me if I would be on her Occupy radio show. And after the show ended, she's like, hold on a minute. And we had a 2-hour conversation about conquest activism. And then I thought she would never talk to me again. And then she called me and asked me if I would do a radio program with her called Love and Revolution Radio. And I think we have over 200 episodes in the archive of Love and Revolution Radio that we did together. And so I'm delighted that she is going to be the next portrait subject. So, yeah. It's really special because she came to my unveiling all the way from Taos, New Mexico at the time. And now I will get to be at hers. So it's really nice. So we are in what some people are calling interesting times. And we are here tonight to talk about truth. And we all believe that there is one truth. Doesn't matter where we're sitting, we believe that there is one truth. I believe that what I believe is true is true. You believe that what you believe is true is true. There's factual truth, there's ideological truth, there's moral truth. There are different cultural truths that we all carry. And I think one of the truths that crosses all barriers and all divides at this time is that it is a time for us to be individually and collectively reflective. We did not arrive here in this place by accident. I remember being at a conference one time with Frances Moore LePay, and she says, why are we collectively co-creating a world that none of us would individually choose to live in? And here we are, collectively co-creating a world that now seems terrifying to us. I was in a restaurant last Friday morning, and there was a woman who came into the restaurant, and she had been, you could tell, practicing this line and just waiting to use it. And she saw somebody that she knew across the dining room, and she yelled out to this person, we'll say that his name was Peter. Sorry, Peter. And she announced her name very loudly. She said, my name is so-and-so, and my pronouns are we won. As though it were a high school football game. And I remember watching reel after reel after reel of video footage when Joe Biden was elected, and hearing Democrats across the country saying something very similar. And so the division that exists between us, this competition that has been reduced to gamesmanship, is reflective of our collective relationships with one another as human beings. That's a hard pill to swallow. It's hard to believe that we are accountable for the largest migration of young men into the conservative right that we've seen in more than 50 years. But when we're telling young men, especially young white men, there's no place for you in society. Sit down and shut up. Your time is over. Where are they going to go? Where are they going to find their place when their lives are just beginning and we're telling them that there's no place for them within the society? What do we expect to happen? We have to take responsibility for healing the very wounded heart of the masculine within our society if we hope to be able to change the outcome that we're heading toward quite rapidly. And so I hope that this time of deep reflection gives us all an opportunity to get curious about why we are in the place that we're in, and gets us inspired to heal divides rather than further them, to take responsibility rather than abdicate it and point fingers. Because I believe that this is a time of hope. And somebody asked me, how can you be hopeful during a time like this? There are a couple of reasons. One, I feel hopeful because we cannot avoid the work of caring for one another at this time. We can't hand that off and farm it out to some system or structure. We have to personally take responsibility for the care and the protection of our daughters and our granddaughters, of our sisters, our mothers, our aunties. We have to personally take responsibility for the care of trans youth, trans adults, for people who are here on DACA permits, people who are here seeking asylum, whose lives would be in danger if they were deported. It's our personal responsibility to take care of the earth at this time, and to do all we can collectively to reach across imagined divides, to hold hands, to build a network that's capable of maintaining the possibility of the continuation of life for our species on this planet. But more importantly, it's time for us to reach across, to maintain our humanity, to remain steadfast in the truth of our own hearts, so that we can walk forward, heart forward, bent over a little bit, humbled, with our hearts closer to the earth, in a way that gives us the possibility of healing the wounds that have been created by judgmentalism, idealism, self-righteousness, a sense of superiority, because it's not one side that has those things in their camp. Every perceived side believes that they are right and that their truth is the truth. So if we don't start getting curious about one another, if we don't start listening to what someone else's truth is and finding commonalities that we can begin to build relationship on, nobody's going to win at the end of the day. And so this opportunity that we have to live in moments of truth right now is calling for us to evolve our consciousness to a higher truth. And I hope that every one of you will join me and all of the other people in this room that I know will be walking heart forward for the next, hopefully 40 or 50 years, but definitely for the next 4 years. And I'll say what I said to my brother when he called me when he got to work and realized that the election had been called. And he said, "Oh, great, now we have to live with 4 years of no progress." I said, I don't believe that's true. I think that we will have incredible progress. It just won't be political. And so I believe that that's true. And then I'll just say the last thing that gives me hope is the fact that every one of us that is standing here because our relatives who lived through whatever dark period that they experienced survived and gave us the opportunity for life. So let us not squander the sacredness of that life, and let's use it to love one another. Thank you very much.
One of the things that I always...
Excuse me, would you please, I would like your name again.
Oh, this is Sherri Mitchell, S-H-E-R-R-I,
Thank you.
Mitchell. It's, where's your portrait, upstairs? Oh, right there. And you could look her up on her website and read about her. I forgot to mention that she's the founder of the Land Peace Foundation in Monroe, Maine, which does extraordinary work on reclaiming and making land flourish. One thing I always feel when I listen to Sherri is that she's in touch with the wisdom that's behind the wisdom. That we hear, we have ideas in our head about what's the wise thing to do at a time like this, how to act, and a lot of it is perceived from ideas that are all over the place that we all get all the time. And then there's something else behind that that's deeper and more important perhaps. And the way she just described this time as being a time of hope for reasons that are, underneath and stronger than the political, I think is incredibly important. Thanks, Sherri. So the last time I want to speak, this is Charlie Clements here. Charlie's portrait is upstairs. He was a Vietnam vet who refused to fly when his plane he was told to fly supplies into Cambodia. He said, "We're not at war with Cambodia." And for that, he was put in an asylum, just like he was in the Gulag or something. And and then there's a whole lot more here, but he became a doctor. He went to El Salvador as a peace medic, and wrote a book called Witness to Peace, which was made into a movie, which won an Academy Award. And then he became the director of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee and the Carr Center for Human Rights at Harvard. It's been an amazing amount of things that have enlarged the world for a lot of us and a lot of other people. Charlie.
I'm going to make this very brief. You'll often have something very important for my resume, that I was on the original board of Americans Who Tell the Truth. So I heard the origination story, and although Gail has been beside him and working with him and supporting him all this time, she's the reason we're here. Because after he painted that first portrait of someone speaking out about the war in Iraq, she turned to him one day and said, "Rob, you're in a much better mood now." And he decided he would stay in that mood by continuing his portrait. So thank you, Gail. And the last thing I'm going to say is just a quote from the Talmud. I was on an emergency human rights mission to Iraq a few weeks before shock and awe. And I'd been to a pediatric hospital that day, which was just devastating. And Saddam had these internet cafes that you could use. You couldn't use your own computers, you had to use his so he could see what you were saying. And I sent out a description of that pediatric hospital to about 40 people whose email addresses I could remember, and it ricocheted all around the world. And the next day, because I left my address at the bottom of it, I was getting replies from all over. And one came from the West Bank, from a health worker who said, "We've had some really tough times here, but nothing like what you described in that pediatric hospital." I offer you this quote from the Talmud because it's helped me in times of strife. "Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You're not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it." And I think that something like that has guided almost all of the people whose portraits you see tonight. So thank you. It's an honor to be here.
I just had to admit to Rob that I didn't listen to his first part of his speech.
Well, we might ask.
Is there any other portrait subjects here that were not previously mentioned? They would be too shy to say it anyway, Rob. Anyway, my name is Christy Gonzalez, and I'll make it very quick. I have the details about some of the things going on with the show for the next month. I did want to make sure that we did a special thank you to Rachel and her crew at the Mill Museum who helped hang all of these lights this morning and this afternoon when we realized that they weren't going to be lit that well. So on the second floor, there's a bunch of lights that were lit, and they were incredibly generous in their time and their resources. Lastly, I just wanted to say that the show will be running through December 14th. Every Saturday at noon, we will be having Truth Tellers shown here, which is a documentary about AWTT and Robert's work. That'll be upstairs. It's a free event. We encourage everybody to come and encourage others to come. It's a great documentary. We will be having a teacher workshop on November 20th at 3 o'clock. It'll be here. It'll be learning about how you can use these portraits and this body of work in classrooms to enhance what many teachers are already doing. And you can find links to all of this on our website. And then on December 4th at 7 o'clock, we will be having Maine Voices. Rob's going to be interviewed live at 7, and we'll be having a similar reception like this then as well. We encourage everybody to come. That's a free event. And
People will have chairs.
people will have chairs. And lastly, I just want to remind everyone, this is a nonprofit, and that's kind of different from a lot of exhibits and shows that people go to. We work all over the country with schools, bringing these portraits in to talk about history and truth and inspire activism in students all over the country. We rely on private donations and grant donations to make this work continue to happen and make this affordable and free for many of our schools that we work with. So we encourage you all to, if you can, donate, and more importantly, tell people about this show. Tell at least 5 people that you came here and what you saw and that they should come here too. Because the more people who know about this, the more chance we have of funding from grants and other things like that. So thank you all for coming. Connie, did I forget anything? And please go see the bodies of work. We really appreciate it. One last thing, the show is open every single day, 10 to 6 o'clock, except Sundays.
Okay, I'm gonna throw this in the car. What was this little thing?
Oh, that's, hi, how are you? Nailed it. It was awesome. You did a great.
Thanks very much.
Yours was great.
It's hard being the first one out of the chute.
You were great. You know, I didn't realize you were so